Thank you for joining us on our journey here to preserve the history of mixed martial arts. When I wanted to take on this project, I needed help. I brought in one of my favorite matchmakers, Miguel, and the MMA detective, Mike Davis. So to do this, we've been able to preserve history. Welcome and enjoy.
Miguel back here on the Lights Out podcast, and that's the MMA detective, as you all know, Mike Davis joining me. That means deep dive time. We got north of the border, Mark Hominick. We had a run of heavyweights with Mitrione and Rizzo and Coleman, and now we're going to the other end of the spectrum. Hominick, a standout Canadian, decade-long career. Mike, what do we got?
Well, Shawn Tompkins' favorite son is Mark Hominick, and Shawn with us, we're always going to have a soft spot with him, on our show. So we're going to start, a lot of times people were like, man, like with Hector Lombard, why couldn't you just do the UFC stuff? Well, Australia was awesome, and you don't know about it. It's a history podcast. So we're going to kind of maybe start in reverse, and we're going to do the WEC and UFC career of Mark Hominick, and it's going to be pretty good. He's just one of those guys that just puts the work in. Mark is somebody that whatever you did in practice, he's going to do more when he gets home. He's one of those guys. So it's going to be somebody that has literally been around a lot of corners, but probably doesn't speak himself up when in public, even though you look at his body of work and you're like, oh my God, it's insane.
And that's why it works, because we had Antonio McKee first. That's like Indian food, like
that's three podcasts.
That's crazy, Indian spicy. And Mark Hominick, steak and potatoes, man. Here we go.
Steak and potatoes, baby. All right. So let me just get our plugs out of the way. December 3rd, I'm at Canterbury Park Expo Center in Minnesota. World-class grappling. I'm going to be doing color commentary there. I'm going to be there all weekend doing color commentary. It's like a big fight weekend. December 17th, here in Chicago, we've got a bar called 115 Bourbon Street, Ignite FC. I'm doing color commentary there. And February 5th, we're back with world-class grappling in Tampa, Florida. Please register on Smooth Cop. So that is my plugs. Miguel, what is our growth been? What have you looked?
Yeah, it's been growing. One day people hit like, subscribe. Mike also said Bourbon Street. So I'm going to give my man Chris Lytle a plug. Check out Chris Lytle. He's got a bourbon line called Lights Out Bourbon. And you can actually pick it up on the internet, consfinewines.com, KAHNS, finewines.com. And they do ship out of state. So check it out. Chris Lytle in the bourbon game.
We also got an affiliate code. If you guys are degenerate scumbag gamblers that don't like to pay your bills, please go to betdsi.eu, betdsi.eu, and use the promo code LIGHTSOUT. Use Lights Out. They take care of us. We try to take care of you. We've never asked anybody here for a penny. We are going to be working on something with Patreon soon, though. I think it's going to be kind of exciting for some of the people that are in constant contact with us. Either way, Mark Hominick, enjoy. Please like, share, subscribe. Thank you.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Once again, our favorite time of the year right now. We get to do deep dives. Yes, getting to go up north with our Canadian friend, Mark Hominick. Good to have you on. How you doing, brother?
Hi, how are you? It's good to see you guys.
Yeah, man, great to see you. I always liked it when we were, being able to compete and everything. Always like your style. Most of the guys up from your area come to fight all the time, and I absolutely loved watching the guys from where you guys were. All the Canadian guys came to bang it out, and I had a lot of fun with you guys. So just glad to have you on here, my friend.
Well, I think we're cut from the same cloth.
There we go. This is, I'm sure you know Mike and Miguel. Mike's MMA detective. He's really dives in deep. I'm sure he's watched all your stuff and knows probably more about your fighting career than you. So I'm sure he'll take you through that.
I'll let you know about yourself, Mark. Don't worry.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Keep me up to date.
Right, so go ahead, Miguel.
I was just real fast going to add that, I never got to work with Mark, but from what I remember, obviously the Canadian guys, they had a hot scene up there and it was big stuff, there. But what I always remember about Mark is that he fought a bunch of guys at 155 because there were no other weight classes. And he was one of those guys that what could have been if he had been at 135 from the beginning or taken care of But like a lot of guys from that era, the story is, fighting an uphill battle from the beginning and not in his weight class. So just a tough guy. You could go with 155ers. That that proves something, and then skilled guys, it proves even more, Mark.
I think we got some ambient noise coming through. Does anybody got like a TV on or something?
There's something right there.
Oh, there it goes. Okay, Miguel, I think it might be on your end.
If it's on my end, it's not my TV, it's my wife. So I'll be I'm muted.
Hey, you go over there and smack her around like I do.
Yeah, you take care of your business. All right. Well, we normally start at the beginning of people's careers, but we've kind of been doing that for like the last 10 interviews. So we're going to kind of start towards when Mark made it, actually, like his UFC debut, actually, which is an incredible story within itself. So on March 4th, 2006, the UFC holds event UFC 58. They have Canada versus the United States because of all the incredible talent coming from north of our border. And Mark, they gave you an absolute savage your first time out in Yves Edwards.
Oh, yeah. So the kind of backstory with that. So they were doing a UFC Canada card, and like if you look back at why they were doing it, they were trying to build George St. Pierre. Obviously, he's fighting BJ Penn that night. They had David Loiseau, who's going to be fighting for the belt, and they had a rack of guys that like, okay, we can actually make a card of this. And then the promoter at this point in time that was promoting George, myself, David Loiseau, Patrick Gauthier, Sam Stout was
Stephen Petrie.
Yeah, Petrie for TKO. And when he was kind of managing all of us as well. And he's like, you cannot have a Canada versus USA card without Mark Hominick on the card. Because at that time, I think I'm not pumping my tires. I think I was like 6 or 7 time Canadian champion at 145. And I was a mainstay in Quebec to fight on all the cards. Like, you can't do it without him. And then he kind of talked to the UFC that like, he'll go up a weight, he'll fight whoever you got. And then they gave me Yves Edwards, and the number 1 contender at that one point when the UFC had their 155 come back. And my answer to every time I got asked to fight was, yes, of course. Like, I'll fight, I'm sure. Like, and I'm not being arrogant, but yeah. But then I started watching all his highlights, videos, and I'm like, oh shit, there might be a little.
Man, he could bang, bro. Yves Edwards could bang.
Yeah, and at that point, that was when he was basically the uncrowned champ at 155 because they didn't have one. And this was the first time they re-entered the 155 division back into the UFC. And, we got the first fight in the pay-per-view and kind of jumped head first. Like, I think I was 23 years old at that time.
Do you think the UFC was trying to go out there and make a statement saying like the USA were better than Canada? I mean, not. It feels like they that's a tough fight for your first one. They want to go out there and almost like. Do you ever even think about that? Like,
no, I don't think I was brought in to win. That's for sure, because at that point, Yves had kind of fought in the dark days and earned his spot. And I think this was supposed to be his showcase of why he is the number 1 contender and why he's gonna fight for the belt. So, like, but again, like, but after watching all the fights, I thought I matched up well with him, even though it was a bit undersized. I think I came in like 4 pounds underweight. Like, and again, I never really cut weight.
Well, career. Let me set the table just a little bit so everybody at home can kind of catch up. So Yves Edwards beats Josh Thompson. Technically speaking, should have gotten a 155-pound belt. But the UFC is cutting back on events, so they eliminate the 155-pound division. Yves leaves the organization, wins 7 fights in a row, but in those 7 fights, prior to that, he loses to Joachim Hansen in Pride Bushido, except it's a split decision, and it's a kind of Joachim Hansen is kind of like the adopted son of Japan at this time. So I mean, it was kind of a spotty decision. But needless to say, he's regarded as the world champion. And Mark, probably a guy that can fight at 135 at this time, but fights at 145 instead, goes up to 155. And you actually matched up really well. Like in that first round.
Yeah.
In that first round, like, well, here, first off, going into that, knowing what it is I just said, did you have concerns?
No, and I'm not just saying that. I knew I did match up well. And he wasn't a massive 155er. And if you look at my whole career, my kryptonite was a big, strong wrestler or a big, strong jiu-jitsu guy that could get me to the mat. There's no secret there. And Yves was not that. Like he if he went to the ground, he could obviously handle himself. And he was kind of like very well-rounded. But primarily, I would say he's more of a striker that defended guys that, didn't have a good, strong striking game that needed to get him to the mat. And he kind of exposed that because of his well-roundedness. So he never really fought anybody that was willing to sit there and trade with him and get in his face. So I think
no one would make that mistake, actually, is what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Couple things here. What was your record at this point when you first get in the UFC? Do you remember?
Yeah, I want to say 13-3, 11-3.
You were 9-4-1.
I know I had 3 losses, but like a dozen wins or close to.
Yeah.
Okay,
your record online was actually 9-4-1.
Pardon me?
Your record online was 9 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw.
Okay. Oh, so 10. Yeah. So I'm losing around that, like 10 wins. So.
Yeah.
Okay. And were you a big ticket seller there? Because the way you made it sound, if you were a mainstay there, I bet you were probably selling places out and people wanted to see.
Yeah. So at that point, all my 9 wins were by finishes up in Canada, and all my 4 losses were stateside. No, but like, but if you look at my grid, like again, first time it got exposed to what a strong wrestler and matchups were in the sport, because it kind of came up in a bit of the dark days, especially in Canada, where you fought the guy in front of you, where, it definitely came down stateside and got exposed to that. But yeah, that was like, I was basically 9-0 up in Canada, all finishes. Wow. And
against all stand-up opponents. And then he'd come down here.
All exciting fights. And I think I had already headlined a couple of shows up there. And we were doing, like, my first fight, like as an 18 or not, just turning 19-year-old, was in front of 6,000 people at a sold out venue. Wow. No, so that's I think what really helped me in my first UFC fight is like, I've done the pre-fight interview on the big screen. I've done I think at that point it was Mandalay Bay, so it was like 11,000 people. I've already fought in front of that many people. Because, like people talk about the UFC jitters. I didn't have them because I've had a camera in front of my face doing the pre-fight hype up video, doing the warm up on camera, walk the big intro with your music in crowd yelling or cheering or booing you. Like I'd been there, right? So I think that.
Well, that's also.
You never started at like the indie grind we talk about, like the little tiny shows. You never did those, huh?
He got them.
In kickboxing. So
okay.
I think I fought in every smoky bar in Iowa, both in the ring and in the parking lot.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So because I'd had 24 kickboxing bouts before MMA. So I came up in that world, like, where a lot of people come in up on the wrestling mats or the whatever. I came up in the kickboxing fights where we'd load a van on Friday night, drive to Erie, Indiana, or wherever they wanted us to fight in a bar. And it'd always be Canada versus USA, but it would be 10 people that Shawn put together as Team Canada from our gym. And we'd fight and we'd get in the van and do it again the next weekend. Like, I love it. But that's a scene I came up in, I guess.
Nice.
So Chris, just to put this fight in its proper context, Mark comes in at 9-4-1, and Yves is at 30 wins, 9 losses, 1 draw. Except some would argue that the overwhelming majority of his fights were high-end, top-tier opponents. So what also helps Mark is he's coming into a locker room where half of it's the same people that he was fighting with locally in Canada, because it's Team Canada versus Team USA. So, like you said, the UFC jitters, Mark had mentioned it, that helps because you're comfortable because you know everybody.
You're right. No, you hit the nail on the head there because, like, yeah, it was there in the locker room with Dave Wazzo, George St. Pierre, and the same guys that I fought on at that point, at least on 5 or 6 cards together. So it didn't really feel any different than any other fight I've ever been in.
And Sam said the same thing.
On the professional level.
I have a question for you here. You guys are all in the same locker room and everything now. I remember when I was on the reality show, Patrick Cote was in my corner and he was like, keep me away from St. Pierre. I'm like before his fight, like, why? He's like, he gets so nervous in the locker room. He starts questioning why. Did you notice that? Did George get real nervous before the fight?
So he'd always come up to me. He's like, how do you, or I don't want to go try a French accent, but he's
come
like,
on, do it. I love it.
Yeah. He's like, how do you do this, Mark? He's like, why are you so calm? Why are like, he's shaking and it's crazy. Yeah. It's nuts. It's like he'd almost have those things like, I don't want to go out type thing. Can't do it.
No. Yeah. They say he'd be like, this is it. I'm going to get a regular job. I'm not doing this.
No, I'm done. I'm done. This is it. Like, and no, because he'd always just see me just sitting there like, I'd just be bouncing around like not even a care in the world and just like I'm ready to go. And he's just like, Mark, how do you do this? I'm like, what are you talking about? You're the champion. Like, yeah. Actually, you know what? We had our pro debut on the same card. So I guess like he won the Canadian title and I won the Canadian title on the same night on our pro debuts.
But you had 24 kickboxing fights, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. So I ended. Sorry.
Because I was just gonna say that even in that locker room in the UFC, and I've always heard of you among the Canadian guys, like you look young now and stuff too, but you were always like a senior guy there, like a guy they looked up to, like a coach and stuff. Is that?
I think it was just a lot of the way I carried myself, I guess, or my demeanor. Like, you know, I always tried to be always respectful and like, I don't know how to put it, like the strong silent type, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like I didn't need to act like a prick or, you know, I knew I had a job. I knew I was capable of doing the job and I carried myself that way.
Okay. So let's concentrate a little bit on the Yves Edwards fight. So in essence, you come in as the ISKA Canadian kickboxing champion. You've got a bunch of those fights. You're 9-4-1 with your biggest issue against wrestlers. You're up, some would argue, a weight class and a half against a guy that arguably should be wearing the UFC 155-pound title. And this is the comeback. So in essence, in that first round, you kept landing body shots right under the arm, right underneath, like where the shoulder connects on the ribs. You kept keying on that. Was that part of the plan?
Yeah. So my favorite punch, because I'm left-handed, but I fight as a right-handed fighter. So
you're converted orthodox.
Yeah. So it's same as Oscar de la Hoya. So my power hand is in my jab hand, my left hand, right? But it's the other side. I always go after the liver. So the liver is with the lead left hand to the body, and it's a little difficult to get that on a left-handed fighter. But I was never even in the kickboxing. I didn't feel I really had that one punch knockout power. I don't. Like I'd always hurt people by either wearing them out and just with accumulation or conditioning or just completely pressure or a body shot, because I don't care how big or strong you are. If you get hit to the body, it's going to make a mouse out of a man pretty quick. So I always incorporated that. And I felt, obviously I'm under Boss Rutan, but Boss was kind of the first to kind of expose the body shots that I made, but a lot of the guys don't utilize it as well as they could. And
even today.
Exactly. And that's one thing that can change the how the fight's going in any bout. It doesn't matter. And that's what happened with Yves is just accumulation. You can't recover from body shots as well as a headshot. And that's what happened.
So you kept keying the body, and in that second round, you saw Yves not reacting well. And that's not something, like if you look at his 9 losses, I bet you can count 3 times where he's been finished on those 9 losses. So you're looking at an almost 50 Fight Club member. It's probably been finished maybe 2 or 3 times, and more often than that, it's a wrestler. So he's not reacting well to your body shots, and you catch him in a triangle.
I think, and I've talked to him since. We've had a few conversations since their bout. And I think what happened is that he went into that bout being told that he was supposed to walk through me. And after the first round, he didn't. And I think he started having doubts, and then I didn't let up the pressure. And then I hurt him to the body, like really hurt him to the liver. And then he kind of panicked, and then I think he just shut off. And it happens, and I've been there. Like it's just things fell apart. And in this sport, especially, it's like a snowball. If things are going bad, they normally go really bad, and it very quickly.
You talked about those body shots. I've noticed one thing. I've been doing a lot of commentary for the BKFC, the bare knuckle fighting, and really people are starting to figure out when you hit, to the body with those bare knuckles, you got a big boxing glove, you hit, that spreads out with little gloves or no gloves. When you hit in there, that digs in like a knife, man. So really, there's been a lot of people recently who are in fights with body shots. I don't feel like people really ever picked up on that very much in MMA. It's been a long time. I don't think they do it enough. But what you're saying is 100% correct. It pays dividends to go to the body.
I agree.
Yeah. So you finished Yves, which is huge, but this is something that's even more mind-boggling. So that's a huge win. Like that is what some people would say is a career highlight win for certain people. And in essence, you've got Team Tompkins coming with Shawn, obviously longtime manager and coach. And Shawn comes back from Stout Fisher 1, which one fight of the year, goes to the dressing room and walks you out to upset as a huge underdog against Yves Edwards.
Yeah, no, it was one of those nights where it's like you put your stamp on it. You make a statement in that, and that's what he like. And I do remember walking to the ring, and that was the last thing Shawn said to me before we walked the tunnel or whatever the entrance is, like, shock the world. And all right, let's do it.
Yeah, Shawn, you guys got to watch Shawn in his corner. Like it starts before the fight even begins. You got Hominick, who is a pressure fighter. You got two pressure fighters with him and Yves. And this is kind of like a consistent thing throughout Mark's career. Mark is jumping up and down. And you see Tompkins standing over the cage, just shouting, "You're the champ. You're the champ. Get him, maul him. You're vicious." Just shouting these little directives. And Mark just keeps bouncing. Would you mind describing the relationship between yourself and Shawn Tompkins?
He was the biggest mentor in my life. And the best way that I always describe him is very few leaders lead by example. And that's one thing that he did in spades. So it's like, I always felt like I always owed it to him. Like the amount of effort, care, time, commitment, sacrifice he made along the way for me, I owed it to him. So like what, yeah, and that's it. Like that's kind of start and finish is like whatever he said, yep, let's do it, sir. Like it's like, I owe it to him. Like he built us all and we owe it to him to not only perform that night, but to, continue, like for now, to continue his legacy and what he built in us.
How did you guys meet?
So I started training martial arts in grade 9. My grade 9 gym class went to a local martial arts studio. And then I went back and signed up that night. And then within 2 weeks, I was competing. So it was like, I found my passion. And again, I came from more of like a grappling, I guess, gym at that point. And small town where I went to high school, where I still live now. And, I was competing 3-4 years and I was winning and like on the amateur scene and grappling tournaments and whatnot, and pancration, which was like the bare knuckle, and I guess MMA without headshots. And I knew my striking needed to grow, and Shawn lived in the neighboring town, and I always heard about the Shawn Tompkins guy. I showed up at his gym. I think I would have been 16 years old, and then rest was history. Like I left my other, I'm like, here you go. You tell me what to do, how to do it, and I'll do it. And the same thing, 2 weeks later, you put me in my first kickboxing fight, and there we go.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
He was a special guy. I had
he's just like, like I said, he led by example, and you looked up to him in every which way, and yeah, you wanted to make him proud.
Yeah, I had the pleasure of hanging out with him on, about a half dozen occasions. And whenever we've got the opportunity to drop his name, whether it's a Team Tompkins guy or not, we always do, just out of respect to him. There's just a couple people that will always come up in our conversations whenever we can shoehorn him in. And Shawn, is one of those guys because of the impact he's made on the sport. And it's something that people need to understand. Like, if you're an MMA fan, you need to know who Shawn Tompkins is.
Well, I appreciate that. And that's it. Like, real martial artists have lineage. And that's like, people who don't pay respect to their lineage, I think, kind of kills it a bit. You got to know the history of how martial arts was built. And mixed martial arts is a new sport, but again, he's a part of that kind of start, especially for us here in Canada. And for us from the same small town that we all started training in, we're still evolving it here. Like, we haven't left and we're not leaving.
Mark, it's amazing to me. You watch a movie like Karate Kid, Mr. Miyagi's like, yeah, no such thing as bad student, bad teacher. You know what I mean? So, I was the same way. I was brought along by people who were good people and brought me up the right way. And like the things I do now, people are like, well, thank me. And this, I'm like, this isn't me. This is the people ahead of me. This is how I was taught to behave. You know what I mean? This is how I look at the sport. This is not you're looking at, my teacher, the person who did this for me, Jason Garcia. So that's why I'm like this. And that's why I expect them to be like that. You know what I mean? So we were just fortunate being there with good people. Not everybody gets that. You know what I mean? There's some dirt bags out there. We're very fortunate being there with good people who taught us the right way. You know what I mean?
100%.
So you had Jeff Curran in your corner.
Yeah.
How much did he help you with your jiu-jitsu game?
Huge. Like, so I met him. So when I fought in Super Brawl in Hawaii, this was, it was my third fight in. I'm 19 years old. And Shawn decided that I should go to Hawaii to fight the #3 ranked fighter in the world, Stephen Pauling. And you can imagine what I looked like at 19 years old. And I go, this guy's got Jesus is Lord tattooed across his neck. And, I'm like, oh boy, what the hell did I get signed up for? So we met him there. He was fighting Kid Yamamoto in the main event. And we hit it off. Shawn hit it off with him because Jeff, obviously he was a fighter in, UFC and in high level, but he was also he's a coach. And he was a coach even when he was competing. He had his jiu-jitsu gym. So I think they hit it off with that. And after that fight, we instant bond. And I went back to Chicago as soon as I was done that fight. And he was my corner for a lot of fights. Yves Edwards fight. And again, he helped me regain my title up in TKO when I lost to a jiu-jitsu guy, and we're still friends to this day. We still speak quite often.
That's really cool. Yeah. He had he was a little bit of an early architect to the Shawn Tompkins teammates, or the team, I should say, in the early days. And I will say, and I want to say this with all due respect, Sam Stout, like his first 4 fights in TKO, it's like, he did not know the ground at all.
No, the thing is, at that point, I was the jiu-jitsu coach. Right? I'll even go further to that. So when I first remember, I was saying when I first met Shawn when I was 16 years old, I was more of a jiu-jitsu guy, right? And I go to Shawn's gym and we started training and whatever. And then he had a fight coming up against David Wazo. And Shawn and I started, oh, you grapple, okay. So Shawn comes up, I judo toss him, and then I arm lock him in like a minute. I'm like, oh boy. Like, like he was new to the MMA or the grappling or whatnot. So the first bit of like Team Tompkins, I was I guess more of the grappling guy. So that was kind of the missing link. Like we always needed strength, but Shawn's confidence and also his willingness to seek out to get our help. And that's when he met Jeff. He's like, he knew that this is going to help us, and he didn't have the ego to say, "Hey, I can't do this." Like he knew that, his coaching and motivation is in martial arts, I guess, mindset. He needed the professional help on the ground.
Oh, that's good.
Mark,
That's good.
don't feel bad. Mike's just sore because he armbarred his buddy. Sam did. Sam Stout.
Sam
armbarred
did,
his
yeah,
buddy.
he did. He got Mark Estrada. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that because that was Sam's first fight and first loss was Jay, and then they rematched back in TKO and he choked him out or armbar. Sorry,
Armbar.
Yeah,
it's his only submission win.
Sam's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu now. He's solid.
Okay, so we're going to go through your career, and we're going to get to TKO at a later interview. But you go back from the UFC to TKO, Hatsu Hioki, and then you wind up back in the UFC where it's June 28th, 2006, where they're not doing you any favors whatsoever when they put you in against a George Gurgel. So to set the table properly, George Gurgel is 12-1. I know that one loss was kind of a controversial one. Mark, you're 19-5 at this time. And are you 19-5? You're 9-5.
That can't be right. He was just 9-4.
9.
Yeah. No, I think I had a lot, like a couple losses, and that was because I remember going back there, or maybe it was to Hioki, but it was a do or die mentally for me because I think from.
No, you're clearly 9-5 because you had a Hioki in between, but you're talking about March to June, so I have it.
Yeah, but no, so the Hioki fight I had lost by submission.
That's correct. So I had a typo on my notes. In essence, you're going up against a guy that's 12-1. You're 9-5.
You had to be 10-5, man. He was 9-4.
That's a 9. The typo is the 9. It should be a 0.
10.
So before the fight starts, dude, you see Shawn in the corner. Move, relax, punish him, move. And he's got this cadence, and you see, like I described earlier, the bounce. And in that first round with George Gurgel, who is actually being brought into the UFC because he's Rich Franklin's trainer, he's with Gary Shaw. He's kind of being catered to. They just think this Hominick guy's kind of a fluke. Just hand him to George Gurgel. Did you feel that way?
Yeah, you know what? Like, and again, I just had that Hioki loss by Hioki had triangled me to sleep. So I'm like, I did have them back in my mind, like, fighting a jiu-jitsu guy, I needed to first off win, but obviously back in my mind, I'm like, don't want to go to the mat with a stud in jiu-jitsu or whatnot. I felt that if I had just fought, like I won the fight. But I think if I had just not played it, that was one fight I really sometimes I have a hard time watching that because I thought I played a little too safe, but when I put it on him, I felt I dominated him and I stopped everything he did. I almost sat back almost too much where I think if I just put it on, I think I would have really showcased myself and everyone would say, hey, that was complete dominance, right?
Man, it's funny how the more you want to win, it seems like the worse you fight, and the more reserved you are. And think about, I always bring this up. When was the last time you watched like a title elimination fight that was good? Like if whoever wins this gets a title fight, those fights always suck, man, because both guys are afraid to lose. It's going to be one takedown. They're going to hold them or who knows, but they're not going to be good fights because whenever you got that much pressure, you get that I got to win mentality. Yeah. Not a good fight usually. And I remember the last time I did that, I said, I'll never do it again. And I hated it, man.
No, exactly. And that's not me as a fighter. And it's just like, I kind of cringe at it sometimes. And it wasn't like the entire fight. There was just moments in the fight where I did that. And that actually kind of put me in the bad books with Joe Silva from that fight. Because it was the first.
Is it hard to do?
I want to say it was the first big fight on Spike TV, and we were opening the show, So it was kind of like, I think they wanted the whole Stephan Bonner,
Forrest Griffin.
They wanted a war.
It is what it is. And like, I got the win, and it was, if you can see when I got my hand raised, I remember like, it's almost like a sigh of relief, because like, I just didn't want to lose. And that's the worst way to ever fight, like Chris was saying.
Can you, now, on the superficial level, you're 2-0 in the UFC. You beat two guys that, maybe you were the underdog, probably you were the underdog heading into the fights.
Yeah.
Well, how was your relationship with Joe? Like, I would be like, wow, this guy, like, we got a diamond in the rough. We'd be happy. Like, what was going on there?
I left on my own terms, because Sam Stout, my teammate, was fighting a UFC 155. That's not even my weight division. Let him run. I'm going to go to my weight class. I'm going to fight the best in the world. Like, the thing is, I always wanted to fight. I always wanted to fight the best, and everyone says that, but like, I'm showing this now. I step back. I'm like, this is Sam's division. This isn't my division. I'm going to go and fight at 145 and wherever I can go in the best organizations outside of UFC.
Wow.
So in essence, you got a super high-end jiu-jitsu black belt. And like, it's kind of like one of the benchmarks. Like Mark, you've been around a lot of blocks. You got to get ripped off by a promoter. You got to beat a jiu-jitsu black belt. You got to get hometown. Like, there's certain things that you need to go through.
Yeah.
And, this was one of them. That's a really high-end black belt. And he's cornered by Neil Rowe and Rich Franklin. And, like, the star power in that guy's corner spoke volumes of who he was supposed to be that you beat. And, the odd thing is, he didn't really take a shot until, like, the late in the second round.
Yeah, I think he's from what I've kind of seen and know of him, like he's got a lot of pride in the way he fights, and I think he likes, putting in the fire and proving that he can hang with me as opposed to me having to hang with him. Like he wanted to prove, I can do this. That's what I think. And if you look at the way he fought, I think he did that. And it's like, I feel in the first couple rounds, like I did kind of. Not outclass, but like I was a better striker. I'm a better
for sure.
Where it should have been the opposite. He should have dragged me into the deep waters early and see if I could swim.
I noticed that a lot with him. You feel like he always tried to stand and bang with people, and I was like, "Dude, you're a black belt. Try to get."
He just sorry.
No, but I mean, I like what
he never listened to his corner either. Never listened to his corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fighters are emotional, and whether it's a chip on your shoulder or something to prove or whatever it is, and I like he was very proud, I think, and that's he wanted to, and again, that's it's not a bad thing, like to show that I can do this too, but also it's not a smart thing.
It's true. Yeah, it's true.
Nobody ever accused me of being a real smart fighter, man. I tried to entertain for sure.
It depends. I mean, if it goes his way, it goes his way. But he is chosen wrongly.
Yeah.
And he's a cardio machine, much like yourself. So you take 3 fights out of the UFC, and the UFC kind of makes some financial decisions, and they purchase the World Extreme Cage Fighting, the WEC, and they bring you in WEC 28, June 3rd, 2007, actually, against Rani Yahya.
Yeah.
Another super high-end jiu-jitsu player.
Yeah, so in that time, I had trained with him before.
Really?
Yeah. My first stint in the UFC was a transition period for everybody, because that was when Shawn left our hometown and went to California. He went to California with Temecula with Dan Henderson, and then eventually on to Las Vegas. So we were basically living in London, and we'd come, London, Ontario, Canada, and we'd come out to Temecula, live at Dan Henderson's house, and train with him when we had a bout coming up. Right? And at this point, this is when Chris Hordecki became a superstar in the IFL, and Shawn really, that was his, and rightfully so, because we had already been established, Sam and I, and he was kind of building up Chris, and Chris was beyond dominant and making his name. So it wasn't the most healthy time in my career, like for the way the situation was. And I know, but again, if you think like Shawn always had a master plan, is that he was bringing us to train with Dan Henderson and eventually to Xtreme Couture. Like, you know, now if you look back, it's like he was doing this for us. It wasn't a selfish move, is he was doing this so he could bring us along the way, right? But again, I was also fighting in this time where just, it wasn't, I didn't have the right, I guess, direction or focus to get ready for the bout.
Well, who's distracted?
Pardon me?
I was just gonna say you need more attention as you know, who's the number one guy for a training camp and this, that, and he's floating around. That does affect the whole team.
For sure. In fighting, it's awful to say, but it's a selfish sport sometimes. It's you need the people to focus on you, not the other way around.
I mean, we talk about that a lot. When you go to some of these really big camps,
yeah,
you're just a number there, man. But I like it. If I'm in Indianapolis when I was training, there's a camp there. I promise it was all about me. Or when we had Demetrion had to fight, it was all about him. Or whoever, what big name fighter we had, it was, you know, that camp was set up around them. You know, so that kind of helps. I think if you're just a number, it's got to be tough. I think I've never been in that situation, so I don't know.
No, it was just in that time. It was because like Shawn was making his name there. Like he was training Dan Henderson to fight Wanderlei Silva. And he's, you know, like, of course, like, in making a name for himself and also bringing us along the way. So yeah, it was, and looking back, but you look at the big picture, he did it for us at the end of the day, because you look at where we ended up, and we were still sitting right beside him, and we were still his number one. But in that transition period, like the first stint in the WC was awful for me, and you can see it in my performances.
Well, you know, we've talked on this podcast, you know, numerous times. There's coaches that bring people up from their first day of class to their first fight and so on and so forth. And then there's poachers that go into locker rooms to look for people that already have a good base, and they big game hunt and they try to swing them. Shawn, without question, was a coach. I mean, he was a coach first and foremost. And I mean, if you look at the ingredients, you got this small, like little area, like you said, where you're from. And he's brought up 3 guys just in this short conversation right here. Obviously, there's others. You know, they brought him up to prominence. You, Hordecki, and Sam Stout. Like, the proof is in the pudding. It's at that point, it's really, the athlete is a nice thing to have, but the ingredients that he's putting into the mix are what's making these athletes perform at this high level.
You could have said it better. That's exactly it.
In case of Rani Yahya, though, now you're talking about a guy with if I had a bet, I'd bet him over Gurgel in terms of jiu-jitsu. But
he was an Abu Dhabi champ.
No, I know, and I remember he was at Abu Dhabi. He had Hicks and Gracie in his corner. He won the trials.
Pretty good.
He had another teacher, but he had Hicks in his corner too. But and he's also a guy who's not he's not going to test his kickboxing against you. He's going to make you do jiu-jitsu. That's what happened there.
Well, so what happened,
take us through it. Yeah.
He like I said, I knew I trained with him. I rolled with him. The funny thing to say, in Temecula at Dan Henderson's camp before the first time I went out there. But yeah, he ran across the cage, like really like diving for my shoelaces. I hit him with a check hook and I dropped him. Right? Like, so the first punch I threw was a check hook and I put him down, and then he just was fighting on instincts. And then eventually it was quick. It was like a minute and a half, whatever it was. And he got on my back, and a guy like that gets on your back, it's over. So anyways, I always after every fight, I always like to go to my opponent's dressing room and shake the hand and say, you know, good fight. And when I went to his dressing room, he was getting carried out on a stretcher. He didn't even know he fought.
Wow.
Yeah. So the first punch, I mean, the base.
He was out.
He was out, and he was just fighting on instinct. Not to say I haven't done that before too, but he didn't even know that he won, and he was getting carried out on a stretcher. But again, he choked me out in under 2 minutes, and he won. So
Chris,
kudos to him.
You got to see the takedown of Hani. I like to kind of like use the analogy of like a mailman running around like the front yard while the dog is chasing him.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hani is kind of chasing Mark like the dog, except the dog is, kind of like blind in one eye, and he somehow gets Mark down to the ground. It's possibly one of the worst takedowns in like WEC UFC.
Yeah, like again, like I'm not an NCAA champion. I'll tell you that much.
Hey,
But
he
got me good at that.
Matt had the first time ever when he is in the back and he goes, "Did I win?" And the answer is yes. I always say, if you ask if you won, the answer is no.
Yeah.
Usually, did I win? No, you got knocked out. So usually the answer is no. But he's the first time ever I've heard of those guys going, "Yeah, you won." So
yeah.
So I have a question for you there, Mark. You talked about, your coach and you want to win. And I felt like a lot of times, what you're doing this for not only yourself, but, all the time, energy, and effort they put in for you. I always felt like when I wasn't able to win, I felt I just felt like I let people down, like the people who spent their time, energy, and effort to help me, the training partners, all that. Would you say you felt that a lot for Shawn? Like, man, do you ever apologize to people? I'm sorry. I'm like, they always say no, but I can't help but apologize. I'm sorry.
No, there's no higher high than winning in this sport. There's no lower low than losing this sport. And when you're with a tight knit group like that, everyone feels the same. And that's when you're part of a good team. Is that you can see, and it's not disappointment. It's just just crushing.
They feel bad for you.
It's just crushing. But again, like all our teammates would feel the same way, and that's why I knew that we always had a special bond in all of us. And again, I still run a gym with Sam and Chris. It's
awesome.
We haven't left.
Awesome. Yeah.
We haven't left.
Good.
So this was Mark. I mean, just to kind of put it in proper context, this was Mark's first, like his 145-pound debut. So he leaves the UFC because 155 is too high. They don't have the 145-pound weight class. He gets welcomed to a loss in his WEC debut, and they're pretty much priming Mark probably to be the title holder.
Yeah, so that fight, Uriah was the main event, and that was the whole thing because I had some kind of clout because I had beat Yves Edwards and George Roop, and they brought me over to WC. Uriah was the guy, obviously their star, their company, their brand, their organization.
Oh boy.
So they wanted me to win and then for us to fight because, hey, it gives Uriah even more credibility when he if he had to take me out. And that's one fight. Like I like over the years we become friends, like Uriah and I. But that's one fight. I really wish we had fought. But timing's everything, and we both had our careers outside of that. But that was what the whole storyline, like every promoter has. That was the storyline.
All right. So you had Joe Daddy Stevenson in your corner as well.
Yeah, so that was when, after Dan Henderson's, we moved to Las Vegas to Xtreme Couture, and Joe was a big staple there, in the coaching staff and just on the mat. Like everyone had so much respect for him and his knowledge and know-how, and yeah, so that was why he was in.
Yeah, did you get along with him?
Oh yeah, from that Xtreme Couture team, those are some of my favorite days of training. Like, you're on the mat is like Jay Haran, Mike Pyle. I couldn't even name all it. Gray Maynard, Tyson Griffin, like Joe Stevenson, Vitor Belfort, Vanderlei Silva was there.
It's nuts.
Forrest Griffin, Rani Couture. This is on a Friday night sparring. It's like
I'd pay to see that.
Yeah, that's how it was in Indy too.
Pardon me?
I said, yeah, that's how it was in Indianapolis too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, it's like it was like, because that was when Vegas kind of opened, where that was the hub where all the guys were training, and then obviously Xtreme Couture was the gym to go to. And it's like sparring days were like pay-per-view card. It was pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah. And
all right.
Yeah, that was awesome.
That'd been nice. That'd been nice to just watch.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. God, you kidding me? That'd be amazing. So you have 2 fights outside of the WEC, and then you come back in February 13, 2008, WEC 32, Josh Grislow. So Josh Grislow comes in 10-1, 6-fight win streak. Here's the thing. I mean, although Mark is young, he's got a lot of miles on the odometer in terms of experience. Grislow's only 19 years old.
Yeah.
Do you want to walk us through this?
Same thing. I think start of the fight, it was just one of those. I was outclassing him on the feet, like he didn't know how to, and I was just kind of picking shots, and he did the same kind of dive with the shoelaces because he wasn't really strong wrestling. I think he was just known as, you know, he knew his ground game and whatnot. And I just got lazy and kind of just tried to turn and kick my heel and walk away. And he just dove at my legs and tackled me, like he chopped me from the knees down, and then got on my back and choked me unconscious. It was yeah, frustrating.
So it's he kind of learned a lot about Mark at this period in his career, because one, he's coming over as the golden boy, and let's call it what it is. You're also Shawn Tompkins' favorite. Yeah. Like if a parent is picking a favorite kid, Mark, you are for sure his favorite.
I don't know. I think the golden child was Hordecki.
I think Hordecki came a little late. You were there first. So yeah, he's like the little baby kid that comes along a little later. That everyone really likes. So you come into the WEC in a weight class that's absolutely perfect for yourself, and you come in 0-2. That's kind of screw with your head a little bit.
No, and as I said, that was like a weird transition of training and timing and everything, and I didn't perform. And again, in a sport where you're as good as your last bout, it doesn't fly, you know, and that's the harsh reality of the sport. You are as good as your last fight. You could be the golden goose one day and kick to the curb, and that's it. And again, and that's the sport, and that's what you sign up for. And I didn't perform.
I have a question for you there. I remember, man, early in my career, well, not early, it was probably midway in my career, and I fight a brand new guy. Never heard of this guy. It's like a 20-year-old kid, no name, and only had a few fights. And he beat me, and I was like, man, I thought about seriously quitting the sport, you know. Good for me, it was Nick Diaz, and a few years later, he's dominating everybody, but that really messed with me, man. Did that ever deter you to be like, man, I'm getting beat by no-name guys. I can't do this anymore? Did that ever happen? Because me, I didn't, for a while, I was like, I can't do this. And then, you know, that was just for the couple of days. And then I was like, man, I can't quit. And then I just kept going. But that bothered me badly when I lost split decision to a young Nick Diaz.
Yeah, no, so that, I never had that feeling until the end of my career. After I fought Aldo, and then I lost 3 in a row against guys that I would like to say, especially for the 3 years being undefeated before that bout, that I should be finishing in the first round.
Yep.
And that's where I'm like, I'm not hanging around, or not hanging around, but like I fought for the world title, and then I lost to 3 guys that I should beat in 1 round. That was when I told myself that, you know what, I'm not hanging around to compete in this. I fought at the best, and now I don't think I can compete with the best with what I have right now, with my life, with my kids now. But yeah, that's when I felt that. I never had that in my career, because I did have, if you look, I did, you know, had a lot of good streaks, and then, you know, a couple, you know, bumps in the road, but I never got discouraged on coming up. It was just at the end is when I realized that, yeah, that was the last bump that I need to.
Well, I think the lesson learned here for Mark, Chris, was he really outclassed Josh Grislow, and there was a noticeable difference. Like immediately, you're like, oh, this is a bad matchup. And Mark got complacent, a little nonchalant about getting up from a real bad takedown, and Griswold just kind of stepped it up, you know, when he thought Mark was relaxed, and he took advantage of it.
No, that's it.
Yeah, that's essentially what happened. So you need a bounce back fight, and these are incredibly important. And you jump on the first Affliction card. We have Tom Atencio on. We had him on a while ago, and he hooked us up with Antonio McKee. in our last interview, you fight body shop student Savant Young, who, although he's 9-7, he's got a win over Kendall Grove at 190 pounds, and now he's down at 145.
Yeah. Well, you know, it was obviously a must-win situation. Like, Andy was 5'6". And if he fought at 190 pounds, holy cow. Yeah, so like I do remember that, like, I think he missed weight, but he looked like, to me, he looked like a bowling ball. Like at the weights. Like, anyways. But we were supposed to be on the under, and this is how I kind of got my resurgence back to getting re-signed with the WC, because I was on the undercard of the Fedor and Tim Sylvia main event in Vitra Belfort. Like, the card was beyond stacked, right? And we were on the undercard, and every prelim went to the full distance. And we were the last fight before the main card started, and there was no time for us. So they're like, all right, wait until we have a spot. And then the fights were going. And then they told us that maybe we were going to go on after Fedor unless there's a quick fight. And then they shoved us in whenever there was a quick fight. We got in there, and then I fought, and I won. I kind of made a little resurgent, and then Donald Trump was in the crowd because he was part of the Affliction funding. And I called him out. I say, hey, Donald, I got lots of room in my shorts if you want to sponsor me. And then he came out after and like congratulated me. And that was the kind of start of getting back to the WC.
Wow. Did you get your picture taken with him?
No, I wish I did. Like, he came out of the crowd, shook my hand, and hugged me. He's like, you're a hell of a fighter. It was pretty, I don't know. That was when it was Donald Trump, the apprentice.
Yeah. Yeah. How did you finish? Did you finish
Triangle. Yeah.
By the way, on an interesting note, I fought Savant Young as well at 170 in the WC.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, he was very short.
Yeah.
So it was, Chris, I would actually say Mark actually stole one of your finishing moves. It was a triangle armbar. It was a double submission.
Nice.
So you go from Affliction 1. All right, here, this is kind of like where I want to kind of dig in. He's also on the Affliction card, gets canceled. Affliction 3 against Davidas Tarasovic.
Yeah.
How far out of that event did you hear it was canceled? And
7 days.
Ooh.
7 days. So at that point, we were, because Hordecki was on the card too. Chris Hordecki was on it as well. So we were both out in Vegas, and we had a few guys that were training Xtreme Couture at that time that I think were on the card. I forget exactly who it was. Well, I know it was Chris, myself, and Shawn were there. And 7 days out, they pulled the plug.
Did you get your show money?
The thing is, I got every piece of my show money. The thing is, like, I was the lowest paid fighter on the card, mind you. So it wasn't, any, because those guys were paying. And that's, yeah. And whatever happened the week before, and it was, because we ended up going out to Anaheim anyways, because they had paid for our hotel and our accommodations and everything. So like, we were looking at Shawn's like, well, why don't we just take a week vacation in Anaheim? Or because they got everything lined up. And then as soon as we got there, we went to, I forget it was Tom Tencio, and I forget the owner of
Barry.
Pardon me?
I think it's Barry. Was it Weiss? Barry?
Yeah.
Barry something.
So he invited us to his house, like when we first arrived, and just to kind of explain it to us firsthand, man to man.
What did they say?
No, just like about the money issues of like how much he was going to lose, or they were going to lose by going forward with it. But it was heartfelt. Like,
okay, but what did he say the reason was that the event was canceled?
You know what? I don't want to quote him here because
we had him on.
I'm not talking bad behind my friend's back.
Okay, so we have Tom on. Tom is like a friend of the show.
Yeah.
In essence, Tom had said in his interview, you guys can listen to it. He said that one of the lawyers for the Affliction clothing brand, he believed was being paid by the UFC, And that
Okay,
lawyer,
so that's over my head. That's over my head.
okay, so essentially, so they had somebody kind of poisoning the water, and then the athletic commission was involved, and it was just kind of
that's over my head.
okay.
Man, all I got to say is it would not have been good had you gave people on my team, you give like me and Mitrione and a couple of those guys our pay and send us out there and don't have to fight that week. It would be ugly. It's all I'm saying. It would have been bad.
Yeah,
Somebody on the news, I promise.
Yeah, no, so it was, well, I guess, like I said, we're cut from the same cloth. I think we came home 5 days into the 7. We've had enough fun.
Now you weren't there, but I remember we had this one of the times when I was, the UFC Fighter Summit, and it got ugly that time. And I vaguely remember at one point, I don't want to say blackout, but I remember what's going on. Then I kind of come to, and I'm bowling with the Canadians. I'm bowling with George Gurgel, not George Gurgel. I just can't remember. I was with like a lot of the Canadians when we were bowling. I remember how we got there. And then I woke up late for my flight. So that's all I remember. Ended up bowling with a lot of the Canadians. Goulet. Jonathan Goulet was one of, I can't remember.
He's a Quebec guy. Yeah.
Okay. No, that explains it.
A lot of similar stories.
It's fun though.
Always.
So from there, you go back to the WEC, and man, you go WEC 46. They line you up with a stud, Bryan Caraway.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So another wrestler that you're going to have to deal with.
Yeah, no, it was like, I knew this was my do or die. And I said it after the fight. It was like, there's very times, let alone in life, but in a career that you get a second chance. And I knew this was it. And, I just made a statement. I went in there with full confidence, like great training, great environment, got to show who I was. And that was the run to the title. Like, and that fight really put me back on the map, on the mainstay, to be, the big show and show what I could do and prove who I really was. I basically got to show the WC my first hit was not me.
Oh, dude, it was pure grit. So Miguel Chris, greatest 6 minutes of boxing, in essence, is considered Hagler Hearns. And Stephan Bonner, after this fight ends, literally compared to what took place in that cage to that Hagler Hearns 6 minutes. And he's 100% correct. That was a war.
On the next one, I think the Jabouin fight.
Oh, it was the Jabouin fight. Shit.
Yeah.
Dude, what the fuck?
Come on, Mike, you're embarrassing yourself.
Dude, I don't know what's going on. Hey, Caraway got to take down early period, estimate the ground game by Hominick. Mark, off tonight. I'm going to blame this on my wife. I don't know why, but I'm going to say it's her issue.
Yeah, so that the next bout was the Yves Jabouin fight. So him and I had a history. So we were supposed to fight for about 10 years in the previous, every year. Like, we were kind of the two top Canadians, and we never fought in Quebec and in Canada. And we finally got to fight in WC. And I think we broke the record for number of punches thrown in, because the fight thing was only 2 rounds, but we broke the record of number of strikes and landed in those 2 rounds. Like, it was just, it was awesome.
Did you not like, do you have bad blood? Did you not like this guy?
No, not at all. Like, I've only fought one guy I've had bad blood with, to tell you the truth. I always wanted to, Shane Rice. He's had a big mouth.
Well, the thing is with this is Jabouin, who's incredibly tough, wants to fight you for the 145-pound TKO title. And they said, okay, well, we just got to build it. We're going to get this, very green, I think, 1-1 Sam Stout. You beat Sam Stout, you'll be good. And then you're going to fight, you'll fight Mark Hominick for the title. And Stout somehow beats him with very little ground.
Yeah, exactly. Just athleticism and grit.
The thing is, Jabouin in his pre-fight interview was like, this is an insult. I should never even be fighting this guy.
Yeah.
I should be fighting for the title.
Yeah.
And,
Wow.
he goes out and, hits a mulligan.
Yeah, no, that's it. So like there was a history, and again, the WC, they had no idea about that anyway. It was just we were both winning and doing, like we matched up at that time. Our styles matched up. It was gonna be a good fight, and they didn't know the history for that, but it was a scrap. It was awesome.
Even here, Mark, just to give you some props, Martin. This is WEC 49, where the WEC was already kind of forming itself into the company that the UFC would buy.
Yeah.
And even here, this card is stacked with little guys, man.
Awesome.
Renan Barao, Eddie Wineland, Diego Nunez, Rafael Asuncion, Wagner Fabiano, and your co-main event. So you're definitely a trailblazer at that weight class.
So that second stint in the WC is I really felt like I was part of the WC because I got to do a lot of the promotion because a couple of the fights were in Canada. I think the Jabouin fight was in Edmonton, right? So I got to go on the media tour and it really felt home. And Cowboy was there, and the fights were every WC card. It was insane. For one thing is the names, the names that matched up and fought, but the actual fights were fight of the night every single bout.
Mm-hmm. Was your goal to break his cardio?
I just knew I'd break him. I just knew I'd keep going forward, and he was a very dominant fighter moving forward. But I just knew that to break someone like that is you walk forward on them and you be the bully, I guess.
Chris, the hardest way to counter is to walk forward and counter punch while applying incredible amounts of pressure. And that's what Mark did.
Yeah.
It's incredible. It's absolutely UFC Hall of Fame worthy bout.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that.
Dude, you walked forward counter punching against a savage with a gas tank that wasn't ever looking to end.
No, I think it was a fun fight, though. I appreciate that.
I always tell people that, to come forward and be able to counter, you just have to be so fast, anticipate punches to be able to move quickly and counter. I'm not that skilled. I just have to wait for them. I wait for them and I counter in my own way. But I'm if you're coming forward and countering, you have to really be able to have quick hand-eye coordination, be able to move instantly.
Yeah, you force the punch, and you have to be willing to not to take it, but you're forcing the fighter to throw something at you, and you're in the range where you could get hit. So you're confident enough that you're gonna miss it, and you're gonna counter and put the pressure on them.
Well, when you're coming forward and you know what they can throw, and as soon as you see that movement, then you move out the way. I mean, I talk about that a lot, just anticipation. If somebody starts to throw a combination, I know what they can throw, and I duck even before they throw it. I'm not quick enough to duck after they throw it. I throw before I know what they can throw, and I think that's what you're talking about. You see the punch before they can even throw it, you see what they can throw, and you dodge that. As soon as they move, you dodge it.
You bet.
And you would punish his body. Mark, on more than one occasion, would give up the mount in order to put his body on the side so he can. I mean, you would even move your body off of the mount so you can get some body shots.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, you can't recover from body shots, and I actually like that. A lot of people watch that video and tell me, "Oh, I seen you do that." It's sitting in the mount, leaning back, and actually punching them in the sternum or in the stomach. It doesn't have to be just a headshot, and it's going to do just as much damage, if not more, especially if you've already hurt the person to the body.
What was the relationship between Team Tompkins and TriStar? Because Yves Jabouin.
So it wasn't TriStar. It was our province versus their province. So for you guys, state versus state. So we were the Ontario fighters that came to Quebec in TKO and UCC. So it wasn't so much about just the TriStar gym, it was the Quebec fighters.
Okay.
So we had a rivalry with all of those people because Yves was not from TriStar originally. He was from another gym, but he was a Quebec-based fighter. He ended up at TriStar just like everybody else. But our original, not beef, but it was just the state for state for you guys.
Yeah, rivalry.
No, that was it.
Yeah, it was a rivalry.
Yeah, that's it. That's just it. Yeah, so it wasn't gym versus gym. It was province versus province.
So after this fight, man, sometimes you ask for things and you get them, and that's a bitter pill to swallow, and not or a hard pill, not a bitter, a hard pill. He calls out Leonard Garcia.
Ooh, my man.
It's like a Mack truck who we've got on. I think there'll be 1 or 2 interviews after this. Calls out Leonard Garcia, and I mean it's got fireworks written all over it. Like, that's just going to be a savage war. So it's like you're wanting to continue, jump into the fire.
Yeah. So that was the point where I had, people talk about tunnel vision, but that was it. Like, I knew I was on a tunnel vision to go for the belt and fight whoever in front. And I knew that matchup was great. And the thing is, Leonard and I, even before the fight, were friends. Like, we, because I have a relationship and connection with Duane Ludwig, who had coached him, and we, like, Leonard and I knew each other well enough before, and we were friendly. And it was not a rude, like, it wasn't being, it was just respectful. Like, this was it. And the thing is, he called Sean Shelby as soon as I got off the mic. I guess Sean Shelby said he had a call from Leonard Garcia. He says, "Yeah, he wants to fight. Let's do it." So,
I mean, I'm a firm believer. If you want to, like you're talking about a title run, if you want to get on a title fight, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can go out there and grind and win like 8 in a row and just beat everybody, or you can go out there and do it in a style, in an entertaining fashion that makes people go damn and get the highlights. You might have to win 4 fights in a row like that if you fight the right fights. Is that what you were thinking? I want to go out there.
100%.
That's a good thought, man. Very smart.
I wouldn't have got on the mic and I want to fight Mike Brown. Like somebody was going to pick me up and slam me on my head. Like, it's like Leonard Garcia, UFC star, like after his fight with the Korean Zone, like, people know.
And that fan.
You know, in the thing, and you put him and I in a basement and fight, in a backyard, in a ring, in a
good fight. Yeah.
Like, and I knew it was a good matchup. I think technically, and I showed in the fight, like, technically I'm better. He obviously has the power and the grit and all that. But again, I knew that was a good matchup, and it was a good pathway to get to a title shot.
Okay.
And you control your destiny. You're kind of taking the grappler out of the situation.
And that was when, like, the UFC and WC, they liked that. That was when, like, because they remember before the fights, they tell us, if you win or when you win, get on the mic and say what you want, say who you want to fight. And
yeah.
So it was actually, like, perfect. It was like, they told me what they wanted to hear, and I told them just that.
Yeah. I remember that they'd be like, don't get up there and thank any of your sponsors. Tell us who you want to fight next. All right.
That's perfect.
Yeah. So going into the fight, Leonard Garcia is 14-5-1 at this time. Mark, you're 18-8, and you win a split decision. And I watched the fight. I don't know how that's a split decision.
It was in Colorado. It's where he's from. Like, it is what it is. Like, I feel it was a clear win, but you're fighting in someone's backyard who's a popular fighter there. Like, it's anytime you're fighting in someone's backyard, you have to expect that on a decision.
It's his backyard, but he's also from Texas. Like, it's almost like his adopted home.
Yeah, adapt, but that's where he was training out of. So
yeah,
which is fine. Like, I had no problem with this split. Like, but I think it was pretty clear that it wasn't. But
yeah, I mean, and I think Leonard gave you more respect, and probably a little too much respect, because he was very hesitant.
And I don't think he fought like he normally does, because we know each other. We did know each other pretty well, actually, and especially through his training. And he didn't fight, like, he fought on his heels when he never has done that before.
No, he was a take a punch, give a punch guy.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned you trained with Duane Ludwig. What was your relationship with Duane?
Through Boss.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's the lineage there is Shawn trained under Boss. Duane was Boss's, so it's the connection is Boss. So
that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. So they're talking about a 145-pound title fight. And obviously your name is in the conversation. Jose Aldo is the W East champ at that time. But prior to him, they give you a very tough former training partner of yours, George Roop.
I felt bad honestly, I didn't want to even take that fight. I think, so what the again, you know, when the promoter does the storyline of this is supposed to happen and this is, you know, the end result. If I beat him, I'm going to fight for the first time UFC has been to Ontario, or like in Canada, like where I live, at the Rogers Center. At that point, it was going to be the biggest crowd of all time, 60,000 people for the UFC. George St. Pierre was the main event. They had a semi-event. They wanted Jose Aldo to fight. Why not get a Canadian guy who lives an hour and a half from the venue at the first ever time in the province? So they gave me George Roop, an old training partner, and I felt bad to even take a fight because, and don't want to disrespect him, but like in sparring, he didn't even get through a sparring round with me. So I don't even know how or why he would take the fight, to tell you the truth. And I'm not even joking. Like,
how far in between your training with him and this fight? How much time and space?
6 months, 4 months, like not long. Yeah,
You're not getting that much better in that time.
Yeah, and I felt like, and again, but Shawn was coaching George during that time too. So it was tough. It was almost like you were picking sides a bit, and I felt bad doing that or not doing that. Like they asked me to fight him. I said, yeah, to get a title fight, I'll fight whoever you want me to fight.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So Chris, what I think this sounds like is sometimes the UFC matchmakers, I'm not saying in this instance, they can be a little catty. And if they think you're friends with someone or they think you have some sort of allegiance, they try to make you fight that person just to put you in an uncomfortable position. Do you think this may have fallen into that category?
Talking to me, or
I'm talking to Mark. Do you think this may have fallen into that category?
Oh, I think they wanted me to fight in Toronto for the world title against Jose Aldo. Yes. I don't know if they want to say handpicked, but I'm sure, like, at that point they could have. Chad Mendes was also up there too, so they could have given me Chad Mendes again. I think I'd rather fight George Roop than Chad Mendes.
Yeah,
you know,
well, what's a good choice?
But again, they didn't give me that. They gave me George Roop, and I said yes, of course, I'll fight him.
So from there, that's January 22nd. And on April 30th, 2011, UFC 129 comes to Ontario, as Mark had stated, and they put him in a world title fight, Jose Aldo. And at this time, you're 20-8, and 3 years ago was your last loss. Jose Aldo's 18-1 with an 11-fight win streak over 6 years.
You know what? To tell you the truth, it reminded me of the Yves Edwards fight. Like, yeah, on paper, I shouldn't win this fight. I don't want to say deserving, but like, first off, I feel I was, but I also match up really well with him. Like, Jose Aldo had never fought at this point someone who's going to get in his face and be willing to trade and punch with him and kick with him. And that's why I was confident in that fight. Like, I went in there, felt yeah, he's the best, but I also match up really well, and I'm going to get in his face.
Did you, were you nervous going into it?
No, like, the thing is, like, everyone was, I'm not nervous. In the buildup, was pretty cool because, like, it was an hour and a half from my home, and like every night it was crazy. Like, I do training, I do 3 hours worth of media and whatnot for like 2 months. No, because it was the first fight ever in my home province. So there's like people who had never even really seen the sport covering it, right? So it was like, I got to tell the story of me in the sport and really shining a positive light on it and getting people behind me and the sport before the fight. So it was a pretty cool experience. But going in, I also had never fought in front of 55,000 people. Like, sorry, right?
Do you think all of them were looking at you during the fight?
Well, no. So what happened is my whole kind of ritual before I'd fight in any card, I'd go out and watch the first fight as a fan. I'd always find a way to find my way to the crowd and watch the first fight and kind of feel the energy.
Yeah.
And this was the first time, because I walked out and there was just people, like, overwhelming, right? And then they all start, hey, and then one person seeing me, and then they all start yelling, and I tucked myself back underneath. I'm like, holy shit, like, I've never seen this before, right? But then as soon as I got in the cage and Aldo got in the cage, I looked at him and I said, I've been here before. And then it just went all good.
So the opening round, he put you at a disadvantage almost immediately. He hit you with several hard leg kicks to your lead leg.
Yeah.
Did that surprise you?
Like, oh no, that was his thing. Like, that was his MO. What surprised me is when he took me to the mat. So in the first round, like, yeah, he came out and I thought that was going to be the fight, as we were going to duke it out, and then he took me down right away. So that was the shocker.
You know, you refused the stool in between the first and second round.
Yeah, so I've never sat down in my whole career. So that was my whole thing, is I never sit down between rounds, even kickboxing, MMA. So
you refused the stool in between rounds, which was shocking. And was your game plan to kind of weather the storm to catch Jose towards the later rounds?
Like, my strength was always conditioning, and we'd never seen Jose Aldo fight 5 rounds. So yeah, like, my game plan was to impose my will and deal with everything he could throw. Like, cause his leg kicks and power, like, it was shown, like, cause people wouldn't get past the first or second round. So yeah, I knew after 3 rounds that was gonna, obviously a confidence level, but also for him, oh man, I've never been in these waters. So because I had fought 5 rounds many times at that point.
Man, so in the third round, Mark gets caught with a left-right hook combo, and he doesn't really recover well, but he gets a giant hematoma on his head.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I was in the crowd for that one. I remember when I saw that. It reminded me of Hakeem Rockman when he fought Evander Holyfield. That circle was like that big, and I remember just thinking, he can't fight with that. There's no way.
Yeah.
And the doctor kept saying it was okay.
Yeah, I know. I kept going, what are you talking about?
No.
It's gonna bust.
No, so the only reason why the belt kept going was because of John McCarthy. So we had a relationship with John, like, know him and his wife for a while through Vegas, and him and Shawn were close friends, and he was reffing the belt. And this was the first time that, like I was saying before, that the fight had been in Ontario, Canada. And it was the first time the Athletic Commission had ever had an MMA fight. So the doctor, this is his first time ever going in a cage to check a fight. So, like, really, if he
was very liberal. He allowed.
No. So he was, like, really trying to go over and over. And then John walks over and he goes, "Hey Mark, you ready to go? Are you ready to go?" I go, "You're fucking right." And then he almost pushed the doctor away, and then I came back to the ring. So that's how that, because the doctor was, like, doing his due diligence, is like, am I gonna have to call this? He's checking all this, and then John literally came over. He's like, "Mark, you ready to go?" I go, "You fucking right." One arm
out of the way.
Out of the way. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
So
good job, Big John.
So
Yeah.
Mark, I mean, go ahead, Miguel. I think he's.
I was just gonna say, when you run Mark's name through Google, it says Mark Hominick UFC, and then the second one, Mark Hominick hematoma. Just so
Yeah.
you guys know.
no,
For the best.
trust me, I've heard that before.
It's huge, and Mark, the pounding that you took, and just your refusal to quit up until this point, Chris, it was. He never really recovered after that third round, but then in the fifth round, a swollen, bloody, battered Mark Hominick wins the fifth round. Like, it was just a heroic performance, man. If it was 10 rounds, you would have won that fight.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't have been pretty.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, if it's any consolation, I had my daughter 2 weeks later after that fight. So the first baby pictures were not pretty.
That's my next question. I know you had your kid. Those baby pictures must be amazing. The lumps,
Oh, yeah.
you had lumps on top of lumps.
Well, how long did it take to go down?
It's just like if you slipped and fell on the ice with your elbow, like it's just swelling, right? So really just ice pack. So basically just a swelling going across my face. But after the fight, I obviously had to go to the hospital, and my 9-month pregnant wife came in as well, and they thought she was going to labor. So they gave her the chair. Oh, no, this is for me.
Now, I know typically how many times I've been either, got a swollen or a bruise up here or something where it swells up. And after the swelling goes away, you ice it, all that comes down, you get black eye. Does that happen with the big heat?
Exactly.
Okay,
that's wow. My face just like, oh yeah, it was
all black.
Wasn't pretty.
Oh,
you gotta blame your wife. No, I do construction.
Yeah, she did it to me.
Yeah.
So before we close out, you had described, you dropped. I don't think you were the same fighter after this bout.
Yeah, well, like I said, so after the Aldo fight, like again, before that I hadn't lost in 3 years, and then my run and my confidence in there was no thought even of anything else except winning in my life. Like that was it. 2 weeks later, I had my daughter. A few months later, Shawn passed away.
Ooh.
So Shawn passed away in August after the Aldo fight. So that's what, 4 or 5 months. So it's life changed, and you can see after that, my performance did, and that's when I realized that it was. I had made it to the top of the mountain, and I gave it my best, and I proved who I was, and that's all I needed to do. It was I'd already fought 11 years as a pro, and I did my best when I was at my best. And I felt after that, I couldn't compete at my best anymore. And that's when it's time to say, let's focus on the next aspect.
Did you think that fight may have taken something out of you?
Yeah, maybe physically, because my next, the next couple fights, I did notice that any shot I'd take a lot more trauma and damage than I ever did. I got cut a lot easier. I'd have a lot more swelling. On the no brain swelling, nothing like that. But just I felt I took trauma a lot easier.
Okay, so one of the more emotional things that I've seen you involved in, actually, to kind of rewind a little bit, was in your first UFC fight with Yves Edwards.
Yes.
And heroic performance, and you dedicated that fight to your father.
Yeah, he was battling cancer. He soon passed after that, and everyone has trauma and deal with problems in life, and there's no problem there. It's just it was dedication to him, and that's it.
How proud was he of you?
But he was strong, silent type. Yeah, very proud though.
He just saw you.
He was not a fight fan by any means. No, oh God, no. So he every one of my fights, he'd show up, he'd watch my fight, and then go home. It just wasn't a fight. My family's not fight fans. My mom too. My mom, after every single fight, she'd ask when I was retiring. They're just fans
of you, not the sport.
Yeah, no, not at all. And that's same with my dad.
So where does this come from then? If it's not on mom or dad's side?
Yeah, like I said, the first time I went to the martial arts gym when I was 13 years old, I instantly fell in love with it, and I really liked the one-on-one part of it, and that you like the training, the competition of just one-on-one competition, and because I played team sports all coming up, like hockey and whatnot. But then once I got that one-on-one competition, I fell in love.
I mean, when you get in there and it's all based on how hard you want to work, because you can be the best hockey player in the world, try as hard as anybody, but if your team's out there, I'm with you, man. It's like, this is based on me. I love it.
His parents must have been laying in bed at one point just going, yeah, this is just a fad. Let him get through it.
He's 13.
Yeah, I got my business degree in Windsor, at University of Windsor. and I train in the morning at the boxing club. I go to school, and then I go back to the gym, and I fight every weekend with Shawn, like getting those bus rides to like Iowa or whatever. Show back up at school on Monday, and no one even know what happened over the weekend.
Nice, nice.
So,
Did you keep a lot of it from your parents?
pardon me?
Did you keep a lot of that type of activity away from your parents?
As much as I could, but every black eye told a story.
Yeah.
Like John Fitch.
He kept it for years. So Mark, I mean, it sounds to me like, you were able to like dedicate everything you could to the sport, and you got to as high level as possible, and you were able to kind of eventually go out on your own terms. And that's a beautiful thing, because I feel like that's a rarity. Most fighters don't get that. Most fighters are told when they have to quit based on they're not performing well, and they keep trying. I'm really happy you got to, do that on your own terms. It's like, hey man, I made it, I did everything I could. I showed who I am. I got to the top, and it's time to ride off in the sunset. I'm glad you're able to do it like that, man.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So
Just to put it in perspective, for me, it was definitely cool going through this with you, because I always thought of you as like a little, a pioneer of the smaller weight classes. But then you start to realize that you kind of had like two hats on, because you were like a trailblazer for the Canadians as well. And it's like, it's two real crossroads. What you can't forget is during your heyday, Canadian fans ran the sport. I mean, stuff like that. And that's because they had guys to follow, man.
Without a doubt. And like the thing, we were lucky to have GSP, because what bad thing could you ever say about that guy? As any sports fan, as any person, as any, like he was such a golden boy for sports in general, especially ours. And he was the one that we kind of were lucky enough to fall behind.
And what a nice guy, man. I mean, he was nothing but a gentleman, dude. Every time I was around him, super nice guy.
100%.
The thing also is, right after like Shawn passed, there was a huge like period where there wasn't a single Canadian in the top 10 or top 5, I should say. It was almost as if he set the whole country got set back almost a decade.
For sure. No, and like, because we had our group, and then the Quebec, like the Faraz Zahabi, and obviously George was the king of that team, or that area, and Sam, Chris, myself, and Shawn were in the Ontario. So yeah, there was two big areas that got, all of a sudden the light got turned out.
It was strange. You got Dennis Kang over, on the West Coast. And it was almost like, it was almost as if like Canadian MMA died for a while.
Yeah,
so,
sorry.
Go ahead.
No, like I said, there's like, and that's not to disrespect any of the guys coming up, because there are some serious talent. But like I think our driving force was Shawn giving us the light and the direction, and then GSP was everybody else's driving force on the other end in Quebec. And with Shawn's light being put out and George's light as well, the big face or the big name, it didn't lead the path anymore.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know I really look forward to, from just talking, with Sam and yourself and Chris. I mean, I'm expecting to see the next wave come from where you guys are on that lineage. You know what I mean? For real.
I appreciate that. That is the plan.
Hey, if there's anything we can do to help you guys out, you let me know. I'll do whatever I can.
Thanks, pal.
Okay.
That's
it, brother. Lead us out of here.
Yeah, well, I just want to say that's not really it, because we're going to go a part 2 one day with Mark that I'm really looking forward to, because when you brought up Stephen Pauling, I have questions. You know what I mean? So
let's give a little teaser, Miguel. He fights Tommy Lee. He fights Mike Brown, all on the independent circuit. Ooh. He's all over the Midwest. I mean, I've mentioned it several times on this, one of the scariest knockouts I've ever seen. was your fight with Tommy Lee here in the Chicagoland area. It was a high-end wrestler against a guy that really didn't know how to stop a takedown. And I mean, it was one of the scariest slams. I'm honestly, I was shocked to hear that you were fighting after that.
Yeah, so the following week, I knew that I needed to work on my wrestling, my ground game. So I flew back out to Chicago to start training with Jeff Curran. And then I was in the change room, and some guy's like, man, whatever happened to that guy that got slammed on his head last week? Is he paralyzed? I go, I'm right here. I go, that was me. So
Wow.
All right, so just to properly kind of encapsulate it, and we're going to get there next. I'm going to walk everybody through it because I was actually live there.
Yeah.
Tommy comes in, gets like a Granby, just picks him up, on his shoulders, walks him like 2-3 feet, dumps him literally directly on top of his head, spikes him on top of his head.
That's not legal.
No.
So I should have won.
Yeah. He got Calmani.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey,
No.
well, hey, man, Mark, really appreciate you doing this for us. Great hearing a little bit about your career, and thank you for all the entertaining fights you gave us.
Thank you. It was great to chat with you guys.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks.
You bet.
Hey, we got another one in the books. Deep dive with Mark Hominick. Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. Mike, steak and potatoes.
Here's the thing about Mark. He has accomplished and fought at levels and beat people he wasn't supposed to beat. And like if you met him walking down the street, you'd have no idea he was a fighter. He's just a genuine, nice guy that's grounded. Like, you know, sometimes like, man, it's kind of a sad thing. You'll see somebody that hasn't fought in 15, 16 years. Every single picture they put on social media is of their heyday, and they've never just kind of progressed. I think with Mark, it was just something he enjoyed doing. And, you know, when he realized his body wasn't keeping up with what he wanted to do, he's like, all right, let me just, you know, change it up a little bit, switch gears and move forward. He's incredibly intelligent, man. Like it's somebody, I admire him.
Yeah, definitely. What you're looking at is you're looking at a guy that actually fits the bill for a role model, like someone that you would leave your kids with at a school to train with, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, I want to give a shout out to, you know, him and a handful of other Canadians like Sam Stout and TJ Grant and guys like that. I don't know if it's being Canadian, but there's 3 good examples of guys that stepped away from the game with probably a few fights left, you know, in their bodies, but they noticed something or didn't like, you know, where it was going, or there was something in the mind and stuff. And they all walked away and all did so without having a lot of baggage, like without like, you know, oh, I'm thinking of a comeback or anything like that. They all walked away and feel good about when they left. And, you know, I'd like to explore that more with it. Why don't more people opt that out? I think it's very honorable.
I do too. And, you know, Canadians in general, they're just so friggin' polite. Like they're incredibly intelligent, polite. I'm Team Canada all day long. You know, being from the south side of Chicago, without Canada, we don't have a Stanley Cup here. So like our hockey players grow up there and then they come where they're supposed to be. And it really helps us out. Like we really enjoy that our hockey players are grown there. So no, I'm a big fan of that country.
Yeah. And, you know, and Hominick, great interview. Look, I think it's a good insight into some of the politics too that the UFC played with the little guys, and that's there. And he's promised to come back to go through the early career,
The TKO years.
Got me all excited as well. So thanks, guys. And thank you, Mark.
Like, share, subscribe, guys. Please like, share, subscribe.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.